screen today. We are coming from the IRCT. I am the Secretary General. My name is Lisa Henry. I lead a great team of 12 in the Secretariat, and we are supporting 161 civil society organizations around the world. Half of them are in the Global South, and these organizations are primarily working with health-based rehabilitation of torture survivors. The journey for a torture survivor is a long one sometimes, and it's one that also involves the need to look at a holistic pathway. So what we're talking about today, and this was actually a desire from many of the members that we have talked to in our strategy development process, was to look at the theme of socioeconomic development, livelihoods, and how this actually relates to the rehabilitation journey. This ability, to provide for your family, as well as to contribute to the community, and to sustain an economically viable job or a livelihood, it's a crucial component of the survivor's rehabilitation process. And that's why we're talking about it today. So the webinar will discuss the relevance of activities around livelihoods. And it will also talk about the interaction between the psychosocial care, the rehabilitation pathway, and the socioeconomic activities that are so essential for people to get back on their feet, to rebuild their lives and actually regain that agency that they're so desperately looking for. To do that, we have 4 excellent speakers. So we're going to be traveling around the world. We have Vainqueur. He is the president from Remak in the DRC. Hopefully he'll be joining us in a moment. We have Peace Avola. She's a social worker working, there we go, Peace is waving to you. She is working in the center in Uganda, ACTV center, and she's working on the livelihood programming there. We have Charlene Wang. She's a senior researcher from Dignity. So she's done research on what is the benefit of doing this socioeconomic empowerment or livelihoods work with torture survivors in their journey. So we'll hear a little bit about what does the research tell us. And then we have Suraj, Koirala. Suraj is a technical advisor. He's from the organization TPO in Nepal. And TPO has just started its journey in actually incorporating socioeconomic elements into their torture rehabilitation process. So we'll learn about what it's like to just be starting on this pathway. To set the scene a little bit, I could give some definitions. And we could have also invited people from, among others, the World Bank today to talk about livelihoods. When we talk about livelihoods in the context of what the World Bank in their development philosophy talks about, livelihoods is about capabilities, it's about assets, and it's about activities. And these 3 things together constitute the means of making a living and actually having a life where you feel agency, you feel you're in control, and you're able to contribute and take care of your loved ones. If I want to look at the mental health side of things, the psychosocial perspective on the journey as we look at our torture rehabilitation centers, the World Health Organization has a definition for mental health, so achieving that place where you're mentally healthy, and that's of course the ultimate goal with a lot of the work we're doing, where each individual can realize her or his potential, can cope with normal stress in life, and can work productively and contribute to her or his community. We could have also invited people who could talk to you about secure livelihoods research. There's a lot of this going on in the humanitarian community these days, right? Looking at this area of research and this area of activity between mental health and socioeconomic sustainable livelihoods. So our job today is to look at this rehabilitation journey. And I think about some of the experiences I've myself seen in my career. I think about times where I was in Gaza, where we're looking at people who are actually suffering for years, and many of them have been tortured, and combined into the rehabilitation pathway, they've actually gotten economic empowerment to do rooftop gardening. So this little piece of space where they can determine for themselves how they want to have activities during the day, but also make an income for their families, really made a significant impact on their also mental health and helped them to gain their agency in life. I've also seen this happen in the West Bank, where individuals, again, who are on the mental health journey to getting back to a life where they can regain their agency, actually get an income out of a small guest house that they've refurbished. And lastly, the trauma experienced in natural disaster, which can be sometimes equated to this incredible trauma that occurs when you have torture. After the earthquake in Haiti. So mental health and psychosocial care was being given to the enormous amount of people who had been impacted, but they were also giving some care that had to do with socioeconomic empowerment. So one young woman, completely traumatized in the mental health pathway, was also getting a grant to start a new hair salon. These examples, I think, are some small illustrations and pictures of what we're going to be talking about today. So with those words, I'm going to say, welcome on board. We've got an hour and a half of time. You'll have, I think we're going to start with 3 speakers, and then if Vainqueur comes on from Congo, we'll take him at the end. So therefore, we're going to be starting with Peace. Our journey now is to Uganda, and please join us. Peace, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and good morning to everyone.
Great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I am called Peace Avola from Uganda, and I work with African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims. Today, I will be speaking about the 3 key areas or questions that guides our discussion today. I do not know, I prepared some presentations. I don't know if it can be projected so that I can share
yes, I
with
will
everyone.
Do that.
Okay, thank you so much. All right.
Now it should be, I should be sharing it. Can you all see? Can you all see the presentation?
Thanks for seeing the presentation.
I can see.
Yes.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, perfect.
Just to let people know what ACTV is, it's African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims. So in short, it's called ACTV. I work with ACTV as a social work coordinator, and that's where Livelihoods is directly embedded. Yes. So I don't know, Berta, are you going to be going to the next slide for me?
So next slide, Berta.
I did change, or you want the next one as well?
Then
I did change to the next one. Do you want?
yes, the next.
Okay.
The next slide.
Here?
Oh,
No,
it was
no.
lagging. It was lagging. That's why.
The next slide should be, yes, that is it.
Okay.
So why isn't rehabilitation process complete without guaranteeing a victim's livelihoods? When you look at the vehicle, it's beautiful, it's new, it's perhaps you know, it has everything in it, but the only thing missing is tires. That is how, to me, rehabilitation feels like. It looks like a vehicle without tires in it. So that is how rehabilitation without livelihood is like you driving a car without tires. You cannot move on. This vehicle has all the rehabilitation perspectives. In ACTV, we have components of medical, mental health, legal, and social or psychosocial. But unfortunately, the medical and the mental health may be well packaged for the client. But if there is no livelihood that drives the lives of the client does not move on. And our medical team and mental health team gets stuck. So these days we are also looking at the changing trends of torture, where the target now is on destroying the social fabric of an individual and the community. ACTV has done a lot of trainings, and now the perpetrators are aware that if they leave physical marks, on this person, they will know that they have been tortured. And they have decided to move away from maybe perhaps the physical torture and go mental. The mental torture is worse. And this destroys the fabric of the individual's connection with the community. Thus, the survivor is left to fend for their own lives alone in solitude. And this affects the way they socialize, affects their rights to access to health, affects their enjoyment of work, which then drives their life, which moves their life. And also torture imposes a very long-term economic burden. This victim, most of our survivors are breadwinners at home. Lisa just made mention of support, being able to support someone, being able to support a family. If I cannot buy food for my family, if I cannot take care of my family, it has that long-term effect on the people that I also live with, my own family and the community at large as well. And what we've experienced here at ACTV, when the medical doctors prescribe treatment for the clients, and this client has completely lost their livelihoods, they can't have access to food, and the doctor is saying, please take this food after you've eaten. The client comes back to me as social worker. Now, how can this doctor give me this medicine? I cannot take it. That means adherence to treatment plan is broken. The clients cannot swallow that medicine when they don't have access to food. Equally with the mental health team, they cannot offer counseling sessions to a homeless person. You know, the worries cannot go away. That's lack of sleep, the nightmares, coupled with sleeping outside, with the bad weather of rain, you know, with thefts. You cannot offer counseling to such a person. That's why we say livelihood is the drive to rehabilitation. If we want to have a complete rehabilitation process, then we've got to guarantee livelihoods in our programming, and we've got to integrate it into our programming so that the person's life that we are supporting is complete, so that we can also see an impact in what we do as service providers. And then that takes me to the next question of how important is for the victim's rehabilitation process to be able to contribute to society. Better if you can take me to the next slide as well for the people to follow, but I think I can continue. When we look at, just like I made mention before, most of the clients that are survivors of torture, they target the family heads, the breadwinners. It looks like the psychology of the perpetrators is to break this person completely, to make sure that the person is not able to take care. And majority of these clients, their work is destroyed, either through the physical and mental ailments that affects, impairs them to either become disabled, they lose their livelihoods, they lose their jobs, they become unemployed, and yet they have families to take care of. So majority of them are breadwinners at home. And sometimes they're even prominent people in the community, like the human rights defenders. But now they want to shut them down, you know? And this affects the ability for them to provide and care for their family and themselves. So it is very important for the victim's rehabilitation process to be complete with livelihoods to contribute. Why? Because this person who is unemployed, that means that this is a very big loss to the country, the economy, the revenue. Government will not be able to get revenue from this person. Let's take, for example, myself. I work at ACTV. I pay the government, it's pay as you earn. You know, I'm able to go to a supermarket or to a market to buy some products, and they are taxed that means that all these taxes and revenues is going to be lost to the country as well, just because of the torture, the torture that has affected my physical and psychological ability, to work. And being self-reliant as a client, if the client is supported and they become self-reliant, however much impairment they have received, whether they have been disabled, whether they have been mentally damaged, this self-reliance helps this client to improve on their mental health ability, to cope with that situation. It remains a fact that, yes, my hands have been broken, my legs have been cut off because of the torture, but I can still move on. There is hope. It gives hope to this person to move on. And also back into the community, they begin to understand me that, yes, peace, I've got a small salon out there, much as I may have been damaged because of the torture, but I can still do something. My skill plate some hair and earn a living. I can still have a small shop and earn a living, where the community people then begins to look at me as a productive person in this part of our society, and they begin to support me. They begin to understand me that, yes, I was broken, but I rise again. So we always see hope at the end of the tunnel. Yes. And now today, I really speak, I should say that ACTV, we are so happy with IRCT because they have, it began just like a chat, a chat with our head of programs, Madame Esther Navire, just began with a chat with one of the IRCT members. And today we are so happy that it is turning up to be something big. Livelihoods is actually something that IRCT saw in our work and say that let us look for fundings, and we are so grateful for that. So how are we integrating these livelihoods into our project, and which are the main challenges, and what are these activities that we want to embark on under these livelihoods? I want to first begin by sharing with you some of the lessons learned from the livelihoods. We had a previous livelihoods project, which was funded still by IRCT in 2011. And it had a very, very big impact into the survivors that we managed to support through this livelihoods project. And some of the lessons learned is that being self-reliant helps survivors to cope with the trauma or the torture effects that they underwent. And also, it also helps to rebuild the community. The communities, the social fabric was broken. That social cohesion of the community, that culture of saying, help someone when there is need, which had been broken, whereby people were leaving you to fend for your own life because of fear. It helped rebuild the community, and the community began to also support the survivors and also help them create markets for their products, for their goods enrolled in. And also survivors became productive again in their communities. This gives us, the service providers, the joy that we have some big lessons that we learned from that first project. And also through that project, it helped ACTV to integrate livelihoods into our programming. And right now, livelihoods is among the 5 strategic pillars of ACTV. That's a big step. It's a very big move for ACTV to have it as a pillar, as a strategic objective for the organization. That is something, it shows that livelihoods has a very big impact or influence on the rehabilitation package for us to help the survivor's life become complete. However, we still we faced some challenges, because if you look at that project of 2011, and now we're in 2021, we still had a gap, a very big gap with funding for livelihood support. And that is why ACTV, of course, we became creative by starting up social support groups. But now in these social support groups, we empowered them to begin savings. The VSLA is Village Savings and Loans Association. But ACTV didn't have even the funds to give them a startup capital. But we told them, start with 500 shillings, start small, keep something, put it there, you know? And the groups were able to do that on their own without ACTV support. What we did was to encourage them, empower them to do something. And today, for this project that we are embarking on now, this 2021, we want to conduct a market survey. This market survey will enable ACTV and other stakeholders to know the impact of livelihoods, to gaps that are there in rehabilitating a survivor of torture without livelihoods. And then it will also help us give us the market out there. What is it out there? What skills are available for a disabled person to do? What skills are available even for a mentally disabled person to do? What skills are available for this survivor who is not able, whom torture has affected his own, which torture has affected their ability to cope with. Survey is going to be a very big project for us to work on. It will also help us in the near future. And then we shall also create community awarenesses on self-reliance, participatory approaches. This will help us to ensure that the community embraces the survivors, so that by the time that we are supporting them with this livelihoods empowerment, they are already available to support them, to encourage them, and to work with them. Then also that individuals and groups will be mentored in different skills buildings.
You have,
yes.
If you could wrap up in 1 minute.
Of course, for project sustainability, there will be monitoring and reporting. Yes, Lisa. I'm concluding, Lisa.
Good job. 1 minute, please conclude. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me that 1 minute. So in conclusion, we are still saying that this platform is a very good learning for us, and it's important for all the centers to embrace it and also integrate it in their programming. However, we still call upon development partners and donors to fund such. You know, IRCT has begun, but the gap still big. SCTV, if we look at the statistics of the clients that we've seen, you know, very many are unemployed. And this is just a pilot. So we still call upon all the development partners that are listening today and participating today to still rise up and support such initiatives. They are very important. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Peace. And incredible inputs here, talking about the relevance, talking about the lessons learned that you've taken forward, and talking about actually the creative inputs and startup power of these own community groups that have, you know, started all on their own with some of the training from you. I'd like to ask, just for a brief 5 minutes, is there anyone that has a direct question to what Peace has just been talking about? Please don't feel shy. You can put up your hand. You can write in the chat. We're breaking it up like this to encourage a bit of a dialogue here. So all questions are good. We'd love to hear from you. Anybody want to speak or ask a question? And my colleagues can help me check in the chat if there's anything there.
No questions for now in the chat.
And this is always hard. It's the startup of the meeting. So we're going to give you some time, think a little bit about it, and you're more than welcome to come back with a question later. So with that, thanks very much, Peace. We're going to go on to Vainqueur, who's joined us. He is coming as the president from Remak, an organization in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So if you need to, you can use the interpretation button, and welcome, Vainqueur. The floor is yours.
Vainqueur, tu peux commencer, mais il faut que vous activez ton micro, si vous pouvez.
Bon, je disais que merci beaucoup, c'est Vainqueur Kalafula de l'organisation Remak en République démocratique du Congo, notamment dans la province du Sud Kivu. Nous voulons dire ceci au sujet de moyens de subsistance qui sont vraiment nécessaires dans le processus de réhabilitation, dont nous savons qu'il y a notamment le paquet économique, il y a le paquet médical, le paquet psychologique et juridique. Mais vous remarquerez que le paquet moyen de subsistance, en fait, c'est comme si c'est relégué au second plan. Et pourtant, ici chez nous, ce que nous savons, la population vit avec moins de $1 par jour. Et si quelqu'un est victime de la torture, il est arrêté, il est mis dans la prison ou dans le cachot. Là, c'est les lieux de torture, c'est le mouroir comme on le dit. Et quand il est arrêté, quand il subit des tortures, il est comme une vache à lait. C'est-à-dire que les responsables des prisons, les responsables qui s'occupent des cachots, c'est une occasion pour eux pour soutirer de l'argent à la victime des tortures. Et c'est ce que nous disons que avec l'acte de torture, la victime sort vraiment appauvrie. Appauvrie dans la mesure où, quand les gens vont arrêter la personne, ces agents de l'ordre réclament ce qu'on appelle leur déplacement. Et en lingala, on dit makolonabiso. Donc, leur pied, si on peut le dire littéralement. Et là, ils exigent une chèvre, un porc ou encore $50, soit 100 000 francs congolais. Et en arrivant dans la prison, dans le cachot, avant de mettre pied pour ne pas subir la torture, on lui exige encore de payer $50 à titre de location. Voilà ce qu'on fait. Tout cela, c'est pour appauvrir davantage la victime de torture. Et chaque jour, la victime est obligée de payer $1 américain. Donc, pour raison des bougies, soit 2000 francs congolais. Et pour sa libération, soit provisoire, soit définitive, on exige encore une importante somme d'argent que la victime et même sa famille ne sont pas à mesure de trouver. Et la victime ou encore sa famille sont obligés de s'endetter à l'extérieur. Donc, la victime sort vraiment de torture tellement appauvrie. Et ça, c'est un problème très sérieux. C'est vrai qu'il y a des soins médicaux, il y a des soins psychologiques qu'on administre aux victimes de torture, mais beaucoup s'attendent à ce paquet moyen de subsistance ou encore à ce paquet socio-économique. C'est comme je l'ai dit, c'est ce qui n'est pas le cas pour beaucoup d'intervenants, soit localement, soit au niveau international. Beaucoup négligent, beaucoup d'intervenants négligent ce paquet-là. Et si vous voyez la proportion de fonds réservés à ce paquet, c'est vraiment très, très, très minime. Et c'est là, nous avons remarqué que chaque fois qu'on attribue un paquet économique, un paquet moyen de subsistance à une victime, cela accélère le processus de détraumatisation. Ça, nous avons remarqué. Parce que tout le monde est vraiment appauvri. Et quand quelqu'un est déjà vidé de son avoir, il a beaucoup de soucis. Comment vivre, comment faire vivre sa famille, ses enfants, ainsi de suite. Et également, la victime de torture, dans le cachot, la prison, elle subit des difficultés, elle subit d'actes inhumains. Par exemple, dormir à terre, torse nu, c'est un problème très sérieux. Par exemple, malaxer, les urines mélangées au caca, ça c'est vraiment un problème terrible, de santé terrible. Et quand on passe la nuit torse nu, donc on sort de la prison tellement affaibli. Et cela fait que la victime de la torture, pour qu'elle contribue à sa société, il faut, comme disons, le principe le dit, il faut qu'il retrouve sa situation d'avant la torture, ou encore meilleure que ça. Or, déjà, il est appauvri. Comment va-t-il contribuer au développement de sa société? Il n'a rien, il n'a absolument rien, sa famille n'a plus rien. C'est-à-dire que ce paquet-là, moyen économique, c'est un paquet très nécessaire. Et tout le monde s'attend à recevoir cela. Nous avons connu des problèmes avec des victimes. Ceux-là qui n'ont pas eu ce paquet économique sont sortis de la réunion, mécontents. Pourquoi seulement nous, à nous, on ne donne rien? Alors nous disons que le principe, c'est un principe rotatif. Ceux qui ont reçu doivent rembourser la même quantité, la même nature reçue pour que les autres puissent également en avoir besoin. Donc, il est vraiment nécessaire que ce paquet-là soit attribué. Et même actuellement, beaucoup de gens s'attendent encore à ce paquet. Bon, malheureusement, il y a beaucoup de victimes qui s'attendent à cela. Et s'il nous faut parler de la vie de la victime de torture, c'est une vie en isolement, à partir même du cachot, à partir même de la prison. Et parfois, les visites sont monnayées, les repas sont monnayés. Parfois, on interdit les visites à ses proches, à ses amis. Tout cela fait que la victime soit écartée. Et pire encore, pour les femmes qui sont violées, ces femmes-là s'écartent. Donc, elles se trouvent un peu, elles sont culpabilisées, elles se culpabilisent. Et tout cela, il faut en tout cas davantage organiser des séances de détraumatisation, ce que nous avons toujours fait. Et nous avons remarqué qu'au cours du projet Grand Lac que nous avons développé avec les partenaires Arama pour le cas du Remak, avec Wisseng Animanzi, avec nos amis SharlenneShr-Jie Grand Lac au niveau du Burundi, AVVDH, FEDI Congo, nous avons remarqué que 99% des victimes s'attendent à ce paquet-là. Donc, nous devons en fait mettre un accent là-dessus. Et c'est là que nous disons que nous demandons à notre réseau de songer un peu à mettre un pourcentage aussi considérable pour ce qui est ce paquet moyen de subsistance. Et pour ce projet, nous devons avouer que ce projet a été pour nous, le projet Grand Lac, développé à l'est de la République démocratique du Congo, de 2011 à 2015. C'était pour nous un moyen d'avoir une expérience très riche. Et nous sommes reconnaissants vraiment à l'IRCT. C'est-à-dire que c'était pour nous une première fois de prendre en charge plus de 400 000 victimes de torture. C'était pour nous pour la première fois de prendre en charge au niveau psychologique plus de 100 000 victimes et plus de 100 000 femmes victimes de violences sexuelles. C'était vraiment une expérience, une première du genre. Et ce que nous avons acquis de ce projet, et nous nous en servons même aujourd'hui dans nos services rendus auprès de ces victimes-là. Nous sommes sortis de ce projet avec une grande expérience. Si nous pouvons prendre en compte le fait que l'étendue, notre rayon d'intervention, un rayon très considérable, plus de 200 km, c'est-à-dire qu'il nous fallait avoir une compassion pour les victimes. Il nous fallait avoir un amour pour ces victimes. Sans la compassion, sans l'amour, sans l'abnégation en faveur des victimes, Remak ne pouvait pas sillonner tous ces rayons-là d'intervention. Et surtout qu'à cette période-là, l'insécurité était en RDC. Il y avait des coupeurs de routes. Moins encore, les routes qui sont en mauvais état. Hein, on était obligé de se déplacer sur une route boueuse, parfois sous le soleil accablant des tropiques. On était parfois obligé de se sacrifier pour la victime. Donc, le sentiment de sacrifice, le sentiment d'abnégation pour les victimes de torture, nous l'avons davantage acquis au cours de ce projet-là. Bon, malheureusement, ce que nous devons dire, il y a eu beaucoup de défis pour le projet que nous avions développé avec les partenaires Arama et Wisseng Animanzi pour nos 4 associations, Remak, AVVDH, FEDI Congo et SharlenneShr-Jie. C'est-à-dire que nous, à notre qualité d'associés, on n'avait pas droit de toucher à l'argent, donc à la subside ou encore au fonds, sauf que Arama et Wisseng qui pouvaient gérer ces fonds-là. Et même s'il fallait payer, acheter des fournitures, donc les partenaires du projet, Arama, traversaient chaque fois la frontière pour s'occuper des achats. C'est vraiment un défi, hein, un défi qu'il faut vraiment relever. Et pourtant, à cette époque-là, nous nous souvenons, Arama ou encore Wisseng n'étaient pas partenaires, n'étaient pas membres de l'IRCT, sauf qu'eux avaient l'avantage de développer un projet de l'Union européenne. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle on avait mis beaucoup de confiance à ces 2 organisations. Mais qu'à cela ne tienne, parmi les défis, nous avons également le nombre toujours croissant de victimes et la petitesse des subventions. Donc, il y a l'élargissement du rayon d'intervention parce que nous utilisons les médias. Les gens qui sont de loin apprennent qu'il y a un projet développé par Remak à tel endroit, ils téléphonent, ils entrent en contact avec nous et nos APS sont obligés d'aller vers ces victimes de torture pour les prendre en charge. J'ai parlé de l'insuffisance de subventions, moyens financiers insuffisants, et aussi nous devons ajouter le fait que le fonds, j'y reviens, le fonds réservé au paquet moyens de subsistance, c'est un fonds qui est réduit. Prochainement, si notre réseau pourra encore développer notre projet, qu'on songe à ce volet-là. Et même la prévention, c'est comme si la prévention est aussi négligée. Donc, le volet moyen de subsistance et la prévention, ces deux volets sont négligés. Donc, voilà ce que nous avons un peu acquis de ce projet. Et voilà les défis en grosso modo. Mais pendant ce temps, nous devons également signaler, le projet avait pris fin quand les bénéficiaires, quand les victimes n'avaient pas vraiment encore acquis comment développer les AGR. Et aussi, les gens s'attendaient encore à la poursuite, à une continuité des activités. Et je me souviens quand nous sommes arrivés à Kigali lors de la séance de clôture du projet, l'ambassadeur de l'Union européenne avait dit que les activités du projet allaient continuer. Et jusqu'à présent, nous attendons à ce que ces activités-là puissent continuer. Merci beaucoup. Bon, évidemment, le volet...
Thank you very much, Vainqueur. Thank you very much for this presentation. I am going to
ajouter ne plus que 30 secondes seulement. Le volet sensibilisation.
Just one moment.
Oui?
30 secondes.
Si on peut tenir compte de ça, ça serait également une bonne chose. Merci, madame. Ok.
Merci, Vainqueur. Just one reminder for the French speakers. Lisa, can you allow me? Pour le francophone, il faut passer à la chaîne française sous le bouton interprétation qui se trouve sur la barre du bas.
Great. So Vainqueur, I would like to now say we have 2 questions and there may be more. So I'm going to start, Vainqueur, with the question that you can see. I believe now we have to spool it back in the chat. So there is a question here that says, and it's coming from Abukar Juma. The question is, I would like to ask how we can implement the social economic activities to victims of torture, like refugees and internally displaced persons residing in camps. I don't know, Vainqueur or Peace, if you would have a response to that.
Bon, en fait, avant de mettre en application les activités économiques pour les réfugiés ou les populations dans les camps, la première chose à faire, c'est de faire participer les victimes elles-mêmes. C'est elles-mêmes qui vont donner le planning et on échange avec Remak à ce moment-là. Et on verra qui peuvent intervenir, qui peuvent accompagner ces déplacés. Et ce que nous faisons même avec les déplacés, dans la guerre qui se passe présentement dans les hauts plateaux de Mwenga, de Fizi, qui sont dans Kasika, dans le territoire de Mwenga. Donc, nous demandons à ces déplacés-là de nous proposer leurs desiderata et puis nous voyons dans quelle mesure nous pouvons les accompagner et psychologiquement et économiquement et donc avec tous ces paquets-là. Okay.
Thank you, Vainqueur. Peace, would you like to add anything to that answer?
Yes, I would love to add. At what level do you introduce this component of livelihoods into rehabilitation program of torture victims? Yes, that's a very, very crucial question. ACTV provides a holistic service where we call it a one-stop center, where this client walks in and is able to receive medical treatment, counseling, and also social support and legal redress for the effects of torture. However, at what point then do we introduce this livelihoods component? First of all, we have to conscientize the survivor. When I talk about conscientization of survivors, it means that they are aware of their situation. They are aware and appreciate the effects of torture that they have undergone through in order to receive the services. Even the clients have to appreciate the fact that this pain I'm going through, I need to see a medical doctor and receive treatment and adhere to the treatment, the treatment plan, and also appreciate the counseling or also the legal redress. And then that is when we can then introduce them to the livelihoods, component. Why? Because it's also important to support a survivor who has coped or is in a bridge of healing. You cannot, there's a level where we mentor them into skills building. We look into their skills, and then also we help them go through the various enterprise selections that they could do. What is it that you can do? So that as the treatment component is ongoing, as the counseling sessions, because most times the social effects affects mainly the counseling sessions. So at times you have to put the counseling on hold to first enable this client engage in livelihoods, to be stable, to get the stability and control over their lives, and then you can then proceed with the counseling session. So it's not at any given particular moment that we say it's a step-by-step, where first receive medical or first receive counseling. It's on case-by-case basis.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pius. So we're hearing there that there's the timing has to be dependent upon the survivor. And
Yes.
there's you're going to navigate these two types of programming at the same time. So it's almost
Yes.
simultaneous. And then we're also hearing from Vainqueur this incredibly important message, I think, around programming, where it's involving the survivor in finding out what their needs are, how they need their help to be actually organized. And I really thank you for these inputs. I think it was also interesting to hear from Vainqueur these pieces about, what actually happens in the time period when people are being tortured, and how do they actually come out even more impoverished. And then therefore the driver for livelihoods is even stronger. Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to go on now and listen to a bit of research on this topic. So we have Sharlenne, and she is from the center. She's a senior researcher at Dignity. And Sharlenne, at this time, I'm going to hand over to you, and we'll keep an eye again on the chat at all times. So if you have questions, please just pop them in there. Over to you, Sharlenne.
I'm sharing the screen, so can all of you see the screen?
Yes, you just need to
Yes, we can.
remember to place to put full screen, Sharlenne.
Yes, now it's full screen now. Is still loading?
Yes, it's still loading, so you can start, Sharlenne.
Okay.
Feel free.
So I'm Shr-Jie Wang. I'm a senior researcher and epidemiologist from Danish Institute Against Torture, Dignity. And today I'm going to present two studies that which is conducting research to assess the gain in quality of life and the gain of the work productivity through a multidisciplinary rehabilitation. And I have done this project several years ago in collaboration with University of Copenhagen and economists in Denmark, and also with IRCT, the Kosovo Rehabilitation Center for Torture Victims, and also National Yang Min University, the Health Welfare and Economic Health Economic Department in Taiwan. So next slide.
Sharlenne, I will just share it from my computer because it doesn't seem to work from yours. I'll just share it from mine. If that's fine.
So next slide, please.
Yes. Wait,
So
because
the next slide is about the problem. We all know that the torture and war-related trauma that have a long-lasting effect on the refugees and IDP. So then it has been a long time we have been talking about a biopsychosocial approach. But I have been realized that for many years that the effectiveness evaluation of the rehabilitation program have been focusing on physical or emotional and mental problems. And there's nothing to address how do we evaluate the improvement in social functioning and economic integration. So that's why I decided to start these two projects several years ago. Next slide, please. So I'm going to present two studies of economic evaluation of integrated rehabilitation program for traumatized refugees or IDP or wartime rape victims in different contexts. One in a resource-rich country, that's in Denmark, and another one is in Kosovo, the resource-limited setting. So it's to evaluate the outcome in terms of value for money from the societal perspective. And both the rehabilitation program is based on Dignity's biopsychosocial model. And our aim is to improve the level of functioning physically, psychologically, and socially. But mostly I focus on how can we assess the functioning outcome and gain of the productivity. So the model is based on the study of Norfolk, and he assumed that most of the important benefit of a rehabilitation program is to create healthy time for our beneficiary, which that can be used in the lecture and work. So based on this concept that we decide to evaluate the increase in quality of life, and which is used in the earlier cost utility analysis, but we can also use for the cost benefit for the society. Next slide, please. I'm not going to be too scientific today because I have published two papers already in 2018. So if you are interested in the study, I can share the article with you. But today I'm just going to be very quickly about the concept that these two studies in Dignity and Kosovo that both address the importance about the economic integration. So I use different approach, the cost utility analysis and the cost benefit analysis. So what we have measured is different healthy years, which is interpreted by quality of life. So we use the WHO quality of life score and WHO disability assessment score instrument to evaluate that. And this and for the productivity labor income that we and monetary gain that we investigate the income and employment level in the both study. And the study was done in 2012 to 2015. And for Dignity's study, that in fact we follow up the patient who were treated in 2001 to 2003, and we follow up their income and employment performance 14 years after the treatment. So the gain of quality of life for both studies, that's from a short-term perspective. So here I have some data look complicated, but I'm going to just come with the conclusion. So the cost to per increase of quality adjust life years is nearly 200,000 krona, and which is around $30,000, which according to the WHO NICE guideline, that is cost effective to increase the quality of life for our patient in Denmark with the amount of money we invest in the rehabilitation program. And for Kosovo, that the gain of the quality of life adjust life years is less than in Denmark, and the cost per quality is nearly 10,000 euro. So according to the WHO criteria, this is higher than the 3 GDP per capita in Kosovo. So then it's not very cost effective in terms of the increase of the quality of life for short-term perspective. And next part, the next slide, please. The next slide shows the improvement in terms of functioning and employment in Kosovo population. That, as you know, that KRCT have some economic integration empowerment program. So when we implement a randomized controlled trial to assess a multidisciplinary outcome, so we use the WHO DES disability score, and then we also investigate the employment rate and income level. And here show the outcome that we between our waiting list and the experiment group, that there is significant difference between the two groups, and also in terms of their employment outcome and income level at the end of the treatment, and also at 3 months follow-up. And it's the same thing that there's a reduction of the disability level, which means improvement of the functionality and quality of life as well. Next slide, please. So next slide is recovery of family income, 14 years follow-up of dignities patient. That we are able to follow up the patient by extracting the data from Denmark statistic. And we were able to follow up 44 patients who were treated in 2001 to 2003. And surprisingly, you can see the figure that our patient, that they were able to accumulate individual income up to 33 million krona, which is nearly $4 million over last 14 years following the treatment. And accumulate family income is even up to, out of those 44 patients we have followed, even up to 76 million krona, which is more than $10 million over 13 years. Of course, if you divide by 44 patients and by 13 years, that's not a lot every year for them. But that show the evidence that the traumatized torture victim and their family do have a job, and then do have increased their income level at individual level or a family level. So it's very different from what media have presented, that the torture victim or traumatized war victim, they are just a burden of society, and they just take the social welfare and they don't do the job. It is not true, because based on also our study group is quite small, that we are able to follow up these 44 patients. But I still say that there's a group of patients that receive multidisciplinary treatment, and they are able to have much better life later. And compared to the primary health care consumption, that is only 2 million krona being spent on these 44 patients over last 13 years, which is much less than we expected. And you can see the end of the column, that the accumulated employment year, that these 44 patients that accumulate 115 years of employment time over the last 13 years. Of course, it's not that much compared to those who didn't receive the treatment 13 years ago. So they only have those traumatized victims who didn't receive the treatment in 2001 and to 2003, and they have been on the waiting list, or they haven't been received treatment for more than 10 to 15 years after their arrival in Denmark. You can see the accumulated employment years much less. It's only 82 years. So that significant difference show that they do have the effect of multidisciplinary rehabilitation program on the livelihood, and also on the social functioning and the economic integration. Next slide, please. So the net social benefit for both studies from the long-term perspective, that I'm not going to go to the too much scientific detail, because I would like to show when we spend a lot of resource to treat the traumatized torture victim or war victim or rape victims, and it seems very costly for the program at the beginning, and that's what has been argued by the donor all the time, that so little effect and so much resource. But we did the cost-benefit analysis at the individual and family level. We find that yes, it's it's costly, and but the income they have been generate will be outbalance this investment that the resource we put in rehabilitation. So for in Denmark, that they have been treated in 2001 to 2003, but then in 3 years time after the completion of treatment, we will find this income they have increased in their family and individual level, outbalance this resource we have put in the rehabilitation. So the net social benefit analysis show that the income generated at the family level in 3 years that outbalance the resource we put in rehabilitation. And for the study in Kosovo, that we were unable to do the long-term follow-up because they don't have data registry system like Denmark statistic that we are able to follow patients for many years and their family. So we only do a very small randomized control trial, which showed that 3 months after the treatment, our treatment group increased the employment rate from 7% to 23%. Also, only 1/4 of patients get the job, but we're still much happy because it was only 7% only. And the average month's income is from 100 euro to 164 euro, which doesn't look a lot within 6 months. But the Kosovo's average salary at that time is around 200 euro. So then, and for the pension for is also only for the elderly is around 100 euro only. So it's quite good for our patient that they are able to generate income and have a good increase from 113 to 164 euro within 6 months. And we also calculate that with that heavy resource we invest in a rehabilitation program, then we find out that after 57 months, nearly 5 years, this extra cost we invest in each participant in the intervention, that will be equal to the accumulation of the monthly increase in their income. So again, it looked very expensive in the beginning, but it will outbalance in 5 years if our patients are able to integrate into the labor market and generate income in the individual and family level. So the discussion is that for the short-term perspective, that the biopsychosocial approach, which with economic empowerment, that generate a quality of life and quality adjust life years, which is a very good investment in a developed country like Denmark, but it's not very cost effective for the resource poor setting like in Kosovo, because we need to spend so much resource in a resource limit setting like in post-war society in Kosovo to increase the quality adjust life years. As you know, that in the post-war setting, it's not only our rehabilitation program, but also there's many factors, external factor, political instability, the infrastructure, social welfare system, all of these are not in place. Therefore, it's very expensive to, it's not cost effective to increase the quality of life or quality of adjust life years for the patient in a post-war setting. But as I say, in Denmark, in a resource-rich country or the well-developed social welfare with well-developed social welfare system, it's very cost-effective. But for long-term perspective, for the economic integration in terms of increase of employment wage and productivity, it is all of them are very promising. side, we can see that from our outcome that in 3 years that the patient will be able to outbalance the resource we have put into the rehabilitation program, and at the family level as well. And for resource limit setting in Kosovo, that will take a bit longer time, up to 5 years. But still, we can see the impact of economic integration that in for developed country that will be within 3 years time, and after the treatment. But for a developing country or post-war setting will be in 5 years time. So again, I will conclude that in 1 minute that because of massive unemployment in the post-conflict setting, which can make the country at the risk of relapsing into violent conflict again, because we all know poverty, mental health problem, violence, they are all intermingled together. Therefore, the economic integration is an important post-conflict recovery policy and the rehabilitation strategy, which should be prioritized. Okay, so the key message today that gain in quality of life that for short-term, from short-term perspective in the resource-rich country, like a refugee host country, yes, it's very cost-effective. But not in a resource-limit country. But it's not just the economic perspective. We have to consider whether it's cost-effective to increase the gain of quality of life over the quality of just life years for the patient. But we also have to consider other risk external factor. And for the broader and societal benefit that at the individual and family level in the long-term perspective, that multidisciplinary rehabilitation program are able to help the victim to reintegrate into society, and in particular for the family, that relieve the burden that the family member doesn't have to quit the school or quit the job to accompany or to help the traumatized victim. So while they are receiving the treatment, that the family member are able to cope with this situation because the traumatized member are being taken care by us. So then the family member are able to live up. So then we can see the long-term benefit for the family to live up to a better economic situation and functioning. And again, the return of this resource investment is within 5 years in general. So both the study have been being reported by U.S. National Public Radio in May 2018. And so if you are interested in this report or the publication, please contact me. So in 2018, there's a big debate in Trump administration with regard to whether it is a burden to take so many refugees. And then the National Public Radio published report our study that therapy for torture victims has surprising economic benefit in the long-term perspective. So thank you very much.
Excellent. And there we have the conclusion. I mean, we're hearing here, and this is of course the idea that there's a lot of learning going on here. So here's research presented by Charlene and from Dignity. It's comparing what's going on in Kosovo and in Denmark. And you're seeing that there's actual also in a developmental setting, which is of course who we're a lot speaking to today. And a lot of members from the Global South who are on the call can learn from this center who's done a lot of research and have a lot of resources at their fingertips and a lot of data that's just there, and they're able to analyze it. But it's telling us a message that it makes sense to invest, and it makes sense also to get your data and to collect what you can. So I have a question that I would like to pose, and it comes from Abukar, and it goes to you, Charlene. Abukar is asking about, and let me see if I get it on the screen. It was about how, Mohammed, you have it there. We can just read it out.
From Abu Bakr?
Yes, please.
Yeah. He says, would like to ask whether this scientific research can be used as a measure by the international courts to award victims with regard to compensation.
Can you say the question again? I couldn't hear very well.
Yeah, Abu Bakar Juma, he says, would like to ask whether this scientific research can be used as a measure by the international courts to award victims with regards to compensation.
Yes, that's for sure. Yes. This is the first true economic study that we have been using in Denmark and then in Kosovo. And the same economic principle can be used for other purposes as well. So definitely we can use for the compensation in the study as well.
Thank you very much. So at this time, what we're going to do is go on to hear some experience from Nepal, from Suraj. I'm going to invite you. Thank you very much, Shalina, for a very interesting presentation. And there could come some questions at the end now, but we'll give you, Suraj, your 7 minutes of presentation, and then we'll try and sum up and see what other questions are in the chat, which can be to any of the speakers. But Suraj, over to you from Nepal.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and very pleased to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Suraj Koirala, and I'm from TPO Nepal. Is working for psychosocial and mental health issues. Now, today I'm just talking briefly about the livelihood program that we recently introduced in our ongoing, the projects for the torture victims, especially for the people in armed conflict. As we have already listened a lot of evidence and see the impact of the livelihood program. So in Nepal, we have found more than 90% of torture victims and their families who are getting services from us, they belong to the lower economic condition. And particularly the female population has less opportunity to participate in financial activities. That has a lot of impact in their overall empowerment. And the livelihood income generating program anticipated sustainability, the well-being of torture victims and their family members. So that's why we thought, including this livelihood component in our ongoing program. So how we selected the person, all the person we selected were women. And they were, either experienced torture themselves, that also includes sexual and gender-based violence, or the family members, or their husbands who were killed or missing or have injured during armed conflict. Certainly, they were, selected because of their vulnerability, particularly on their poor livelihood and economic status, due to which women alone being, the breadwinner for the families and their husband, either missed or killed. In the case of injured husband, women even had to manage their regular expenses for the health treatment. So that's why, they had lots of, the additional responsibilities. Few of the women who participating in our program, they are from the field labor and they don't have any land for the cultivation and have to depend on the labor work for hand to mouth. So the approach we adopted for this program is, first we selected the women, and we organized 3 days training to educate them the various options to get involved in this livelihood, the projects. And we also developed the business plan for each of them, where we clearly identify what their contribution will be and what the organization and the program can support, because we want to make this combined effort. And there also has been discussed about the market promotion and networking, and also we discuss how we can make it more sustainable and how we can link those the component with ongoing government services that has been providing in the local community. So our counselors who are based in the community, they met these women several times, in fact, to empower and to motivate them to get engaged in this program, and also the linking with the other resources available in the community. So we have 21 women engaged in this program, and 17 of them have the selected for these livestock farming like pigs and goat farming, and 2 of them have the kind of cosmetic shops and tailoring. So to execute their business plan, we have TPO, we engaged from the very beginning in consultation with them. We are not providing them the cash, but we are supporting them to maintain their shared farmhouse. The cost of labor has been paid, the buying of material and bringing them to their houses, such as the transportation cost were paid by TPO Nepal, to ensure their ownership in this program. They were also responsible to buy a livestock like goat and pigs, whatever they have selected to be, the part of. So this is the very initial program that we are approaching. So we don't have very concrete result at this point of time, but we have seen some preliminary, the response and the changes in the women. Some of the women, they expressed their happiness to our team, and they appreciate that we have brought this component together with the psychosocial and mental health support. They also appreciated that TPO Nepal recognized this need because many projects, they don't cover this component. And during the follow-up visit at their home by our counselors, the women and even their family members expressed their happiness and committed that they will continue their livelihood work, but also would like to expand in the days to come. So that's their commitment that we have received. And one of the women also expressed that she was not clear at the beginning how and how soon it is going to be. But later on, having a lot of the visits and kind of the counseling, motivational counseling provided by our counselors, she gained confidence and happily engaged in the program. Now she's preparing for the goat farming, so which is also the good our impression that we have. And one of the statement that I would like to share with the team from one of the women, she said, like, I'm very happy that I got the opportunity of livelihood program from TPO Nepal. Me and many of us have never got an opportunity to participate in this type of support before. None of the other gave us priority. In fact, often the people who speak loud and have connection grab these benefits, but not to us who quite silent. So I'm very happy that I have been included and the being involved in this program. So it means like the message is very strong, like in the community, like the community, like those who are up in upfront and whose the voice are allowed and who have a good connections, they have a better opportunity to this sort of activities. So we found the having integration of this mental health and psychosocial program together with the income generating and the livelihood program will have a lot of the fruitful productivity that we have found, because you have an emotional component attached with this. So we found a little bit, the follow-up actions to be done in the coming days. As I said, it is a very new program for us. We are learning a lot from this program. So what we are thinking is, we found is we should meet these, the women regularly and motivate them on a continuous basis to improve, so that their self-esteem and confidence will not go down. And because these people need special attention, so we need to, keep connecting with them. So second thing is we need to link them with the government ongoing livelihood program at the community level, and also increase the collaboration with other local development partners to raise more resources for scaling of their business, because we are just starting and our money and our support is not that big. So we need to work on that, and also the provide regular counseling and other essential support to retain their well-being, because it has to be go simultaneously. All the program, including the livelihood, has to be gone on a simultaneously and hand-by-hand approach. So that's why this is something we have identified. So I will stop here. This is the very brief the experience that we have experiencing now. So we'll be very happy to respond if there is any question. Thank you, Lisa. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Suraj. And a really interesting perspective here also about the gender perspective and the empowerment piece that comes into play when actually this livelihoods support comes into community to women and then into the community. So it's a very interesting perspective. I would like to open up for questions now to any of the speakers, in particular Suraj. And I'm going to kick off because Peter Chum has a question to Vainqueur. And Peter, would you like to state the question yourself? If you open your mic, you can just read it out. Just to get some other voices on the call. Peter, are you there? Otherwise, I will read it for him. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I was asking Vainqueur whether there is a way of measuring his impact in the field. And in some places, we discovered that when we give out assistance, for instance, income generation assistance to people, to our clients, some sort of either they misspend it or they use it for other things, or other needs like health needs, social needs, and so on. Is there a way of mentoring these people to be productive in the field? That's what I wanted to ask Vainqueur. Thank you, Lisa.
Peter. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Vainqueur, question clear to you?
Oui, merci. Bon, il demande les moyens de mesure, hein, de l'aide qu'on donne aux victimes. Il y a des moyens pour mesurer. C'est-à-dire que quand on attribue des moyens de subsistance, il y a des paramètres, il y a des indicateurs fixés d'avance pour que, à l'issue du développement de l'activité, on peut voir si la victime a réellement eu des bénéfices et comment il a utilisé ce qu'il a gagné comme bénéfice pour sa famille, pour la société ou encore pour ses enfants, si vous voulez bien. Donc, nous avons des paramètres fixés conjointement avec chaque victime. C'est ça. OK.
Thank you, Vainqueur. Is there anyone else that would like to respond to that question? Otherwise, I would like to invite Miriam to the floor. Miriam, you had a comment in the chat that was quite an interesting one. Would you like to take the floor and read it out? Again, just to get some other voices online. I don't know, Miriam, are you still with us?
Yes, please. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, yeah, I was saying counseling and livelihood support goes hand in hand. At times, inability to engage in livelihood activities can be a source of considerable distress in anyone who is either a victim of trauma or any other. We have seen that with the clients that we deal with, they are deprived of many opportunities within the communities they are in. And as a result of that, if you engage them in any source of livelihood support, it would augment the counseling. There is no way that you can say, okay, I'm going to stop counseling at this stage and start maybe introducing livelihood. The two concepts go hand in hand. I liked the example that was used that counseling without a source of livelihood support is like a vehicle without tires. Oh,
exactly.
That's very true. It's like rehabilitation without a livelihood support. So I think this concept is just what we need as therapists. And in our counseling setting, it's something that has been missing. You know, it's one thing to maybe focus on the thought process, behavior process, but needs assessment will reveal what exactly this client will be missing. So thank you very much for this presentation. They're so meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. I'm really pleased that you came with that comment. And I think it is spot on, this idea of, you know, the car without the wheels. It was a beautiful picture we all have in our heads, I think. And then we also know that we have the data behind it. So Sharlene, the work that you've been doing and this ability to take the data and then present it to us in a way that actually, you know, is accessible. And this also shows that there's evidence, right? There's some anecdotal evidence, a lot of it, but there's also this, you know, hardcore cost-benefit analysis and the interesting point of individuals being directly linked, of course, to their families and then their communities, and then the giving back to society eventually when you have agency and you're able to provide. Peter, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes. I have a question for Dignity. I want to thank the representative from Dignity for the presentation of their research and all of that. My question is how she talked a lot on the employment prospects that people have when they go through their support processes. So I wanted to find out, for instance, what kind of employment, what kind of jobs has she been able to make out from from those whom she has supported? Because we also can learn from that experience. So what are the common jobs that people get to be integrated in society? That's just the question I wanted to get.
Thank you, Peter. Shalina?
Yes, we didn't do the in-depth assessment about the type of the job they get, but we have some overview for our project in Kosovo and in Denmark as well. That in Kosovo, mostly, even during the treatment period, that some of our patients in KRCT couldn't continue the treatment because they already get some part-time job or full-time job. So then they couldn't get the leave for 2-3 hours to come to the clinic, and mostly they are labor demanding job. So in my article that I do mention and other things that physiotherapy or rehabilitation in terms of physical outcome is also quite important, particularly for those victims coming from labor demanding area, that they most likely get some job that demand labor work. So if they have a poor physical functioning, for example, that we cannot walk long, or they have a very low hand grip strength, those poor physical indicator, so very unlikely that they can get a good job. That's why we say this is so important to have this biopsychosocial approach, because most of them don't get this office job, and because they stop their education and so on. So in Kosovo study, most of them get the labor demanding job, and then after the rehabilitation, that which improve their physical functioning, they are able to take some part-time labor demanding job. And for the project in Dignity, at that time we didn't do the in-depth assessment, but one of my former student, she has done her PhD related on this topic. So I don't have data now because she's still publishing the result. But when this is available, I can share with all of you that about the improvement. But again, we would like to do something similar, the in-depth analysis, because in Sweden, that rehabilitation program that particularly treating the chronic pain and depression, that they did do the study, but they have all kinds of patients, including refugees and torture victims. So it's not focusing on torture victim only. They do show that some of the patients are able to move from blue collar class to the white collar class during the treatment period. But in Sweden, you know that they have very good social welfare system, that they have a 1 or 2 years treatment. At that time, they can have some job training, or they can have some course for the college. So that's why they are able to show some proportion of patients are able to move from blue collar class labor demanding jobs to some office job. But we are unable to do that. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, here we definitely hear, and it's good to know what goes on in the global community, right? Who are treating torture survivors. The primary focus here is looking at Global South. And of course, that's the idea of learning. And therefore, there are some ideas in the data here that Shalina is talking about of what type of jobs can actually torture survivors first get. I would like to then move on, because Niranjali, in the chat, you have an interesting comment from FRC. Would you like to just, as we're about to close now, come with the last comment here? Niranjali, I don't know if you can open your microphone.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey.
Hope you can hear me.
Just fine.
Yes, so just there's no questions from my end, but I just want to share how FRC works and how FRC provide the livelihood support services as a holistic approach. So due to the funding restrictions and the certain protocols and procedures that we need to follow in the ground level, that we normally provide livelihood support services by end of the service provision. So for example, we select the client, provide livelihood, provide rehabilitation services, aid the client and do the follow-up, and provide livelihood support services if the client in a real need of livelihood support services. That's the process that we follow. Because one thing is FRC has very limited funding for livelihood support services. That's one thing. So we have to select most needy clients. Yeah, and the second thing is that if you look at the locations that we work, normally the livelihood support services are provided by the government also. So when you work with the government, you should not duplicate your list with them, because they also have plans. There's a waiting list in their list. So you have to cross-check with them, and then we provide. Also, because of these procedures, and the follow-up with the government stakeholders and everything, it's very time consuming, and it's a lot of work in the field level, where you go meet the government stakeholders, get the approvers, and do the baseline survey with the client, assess them, do a home visit, and all of that is there. So it's very time consuming, and because of the limited resources that we have, it's very difficult to provide the direct livelihood support services during the counseling service provision time. So that's why we sort of have an approach where we provide the services end of the counseling services. We provide counseling services, and then we provide the livelihood services. But
excellent.
In between, during the service provision, direct counseling service provision, that we do refer clients for the other service providers. If the client is in a real need of livelihood, we sort of refer them to the relevant stakeholders, and we do follow up whether the client has received the services or not. But in the recent past, we have been observing in different parts of the country, even from other local NGOs and other stakeholders, and even from the government sector, that there are very limited funding is available for livelihood support services. Even though we refer clients, sometimes they don't get it. So that's one thing. And during the during the livelihood support service, when we provide livelihood support services, that we make sure to provide the relevant trainings, also the skills. For example, very simple trainings like about marketing, savings, and stuff like that.
Sure, excellent.
We provide the training programs also. So there's another criteria that we use. Sometimes some clients get relevant. Yes.
I would just like to say, I think this has been an excellent conclusion. I'm sorry to interrupt you. And what I would like to do is, I mean, because we're hearing things like baseline study, we're hearing things like, following along the pathway, making sure you're not overlapping with other services that are provided, and partnering with others. On this note, I would just like to say, and there's a lot more in the chat, I can hear this conversation could go on forever. Our time is up, unfortunately.
Yes.
But the conversation does not have to end. So within IRCT, we have a membership community. It's a virtual online platform called fabo.org. We very much encourage all of you to go and join the community. Berta is online here. She will send to those who have responded to the meeting an invitation, and all IRCT members already know it. But we will log, all the presentations will be there, and the recording from this meeting will be there. And we also encourage you to continue the conversation, right? This is about learning. It's about taking what you've heard today and trying to actually employ it and use it in your own organization. And last but not least, you know who to reach out to if you run into problems along the way, right? And the data is here that shows that this works. Finally, I would say we as IRCT are really happy for this conversation, because we're going to take a lot of what we've heard today into our strategy process. We're developing our new strategy from 2022 to 25, and this conversation is going to inform a big piece of our strategy. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Do we have a 2-minute evaluation that we want to put on the screen? So we're going to ask you for 1 more minute of your time. Please answer 3 questions so we know how to do this better in future, so we can learn. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you all. We'll display, as Lisa said, we'll display now 3 questions to evaluate the session today. And we will really appreciate your inputs on that to keep improving these webinars. And again, the forum on Fabo will be created soon. We'll share the recording, and hopefully we'll continue the conversation there. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Suraj, thank you very much, and to all the speakers. As you're, please
Bye,
have a good
Suraj.
afternoon,
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
It was great to hear from you all. Really nice to see your faces. Hey, Abukar.
Thank you
To see
too
you.
for organizing this. I've
You're
learned
so
a
welcome.
lot.
I'm glad to
Thank
hear that,
you,
Bruce. The whole idea.
Yes, yes.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you.
Bye,
Peter.
Peter. Bye, Alex.